Today on Patreon, we are doing Episode 3, Part 1, Big Mek Deff Dread Clients Only. On this episode, we're going to be building a highly specialized and customized Big Mek Deff Dread. Here is a picture of it. You may or may not remember, this was from an original White Dwarf magazine, really back in the day, an older model. Now, this particular model was kit bashed from a tank turret that was turned upright. If you look there closely, you may be able to tell how they did it, and then they added kind of a clear cupola there on top. Here's an image of the finished model. Obviously, our model is quite different, but it's inspired by the Big Mek Deff Dread. Essentially, the client asked for the biggest Deff Dread he'd ever seen. So we started with the Deff Dread torso, but we did big arms, big legs, big everything, including big knob. So to make this kit a little bit bigger, we're going to use a Bullgrin kit, which is an Imperial Guard kit, or Astra Militarum as they're now called. These are basically Ogrin models. They're big, giant, hulking, brutish models, which are frankly perfect for knobs. We used these guys before. As long as you scratch off some of this Imperial iconography and you don't use any of the specific Imperial weaponry, paint the skin green, put a knob head on there, you've really got a great looking big knob. Big mech means big knob, big body, but we also want some specific mech bits. So we've picked out a few bits here, specifically a mech head. This is a knob body, which we're probably not going to use, but for sake of argument, I like to keep a couple things on my workbench that are different, just in case I want something alternate. So this is my Dreadnought Killacan box. I keep a lot of my bits in smaller boxes like this because when I do a build, it makes it quick and easy to grab all of my contents at once. So here I've got special weapons, rocket launchers, I've got scorches, grot launches, melee weapons, spare arms, different shooters, really anything that I might want. I also have spare pieces from Robotech or different ranges that I think look close enough that I might need them at some point. Spare feet from various models, just whatever is laying around. Any good bits boxes like this, and I have a bits box for just about every range of models. This is a Star Wars model that, frankly, it's pretty useless, but I thought I might want these piston arms for something down the road. These are from an original Killacan model from way back in the 80s that I keep around in case I want some spare wires or hoses. I try to organize my bits boxes as well as I can. I always keep an extra copy of the instructions handy just in case I need to reference something. And then sometimes I keep some reference material in there for inspiration. This model was built from a Dread Knight from the Nemesis kit. Would have made a good model for this, but we're looking for something a little original here. To start with, I'm just going to clip the Deff Dread kit, put the torso together. I want to get the torso together first because I really want to be able to size out the knob body, which is going to be one of the most important parts at the beginning of the build. So here I'm just putting the torso together. I know I'm going to have to clip off this front forward eye section here in the front because I want the knob's head to be poking out. So to start off, we're just going to build the Deff Dread torso. Essentially, these always go together pretty stock, but the big difference here is I want the body of the knob to be kind of poking out, kind of R2-D2 style. So I'm going to basically put the body together, but I'm going to cut a window here in the very front of the model. This is so that his head can be seen. I'll also be able to see the shoulder pads. So to start, I'm really just kind of clipping off the bits from the kit that I need. Once I get these kind of trimmed up and cleaned up with the flat edge of my hobby knife, I'm going to start dry fitting them for a sub-assembly. And even at this point, I'm beginning to conceptualize how this guy is going to fit together. Specifically, I know this hatch up top is going to be a problem. So I know I'm going to have to remove that pretty early into the build. Okay, so at this point, I'm starting to realize this hatch is definitely going to be a problem. I'm thinking about how I'm going to get this body in there. So I think at first, maybe what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build the body, the torso of this thing halfway, and then kind of stick the knob down inside of there, cut off this front window so he can see out. And the other thing that I know I'm going to have to do very early, as you can kind of see there at the top of the frame, the hatch is going to have to come off of this thing. And while I could do something kind of fun where his head's poking out, it would always be kind of peekaboo style. It wouldn't quite be as much space as I want. So I think the better solution here is really just to rend off the front of this piece. So I think about it a couple times and then I make the decision to go ahead and do it. For better or worse, I'm going to go ahead and clip it off. And this is going to be a big important part of the build later on, so it really is fine. The other nice thing about this is that it gives me a lot of cool pieces left over. I'm not going to use the face plates on this model, so I can use them later too. So I dry fit the other pieces and realized pretty quickly on that to get this body down in there, it's going to be setting kind of low. Now, I could use legs from the Bullgren kit and shove those down in there just to hold it in place. But then I'm really wasting legs, and on top of that, I'm going to have to cut them down to get them down in there. So it's kind of a waste of part. So what I ultimately decide on doing is just cutting off the top hatch, and then I'm going to wedge some green stuff or yellow stuff down in there for the body to basically set in, kind of like bubble gum. And that's really it. You're never going to see the bottom of the model. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It's only important that he be suspended to the same point. So for this, I grab Epoxy Sculpt. It's a 2-part modeling compound by Avis Studios. I really just shove it down in there after I've mixed it together in equal parts. And then what I'm really doing here is just kind of custom fitting the knob down in there to make sure he fits appropriately. When he's not high enough for me, I pull him out. I put some more green stuff down in there to wedge him up a little bit more. And this is going to dry overnight, and it's going to sort of hold him in position. So I want to make sure the position is right. So I shove him up all the way to the front of the model to make sure that you can see his face as well as possible. The thing that I'm realizing very quickly is the compartment's not going to be big enough for his arms. And while that's a brief debate in my mind as to whether or not I should try to fit his arms down in there, ultimately I figure it doesn't really matter. Either he's hardwired in kind of dreadnought style, or he's his arms are just incorporated into the suit. And either way, it doesn't really matter for the purpose of the build. He's visible, he looks good, and that's the most important thing. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is to make this guy bigger is we want to get him bigger limbs, bigger legs, bigger hands, bigger everything. So at first I grab a couple knight legs, but they're just way too big for this project. The regular size legs now feel a little bit dinky. So I'm looking for some alternate legs, and I happen across these Mauler Fiend arms that I had left over from another project, which don't fit the right way forward, but if you turn them backwards, they kind of work great as legs. Kind of where the old elbow was becomes the new knee. Since it's Orky, it doesn't matter if it's backwards or facing the wrong way. We're going to swap it out anyway. So basically, I dry fit these a couple times to make sure they feel right. Figure out basically where they're going to go, and then I remove the hands, because the hands are not feet. This is not, Planet of the Apes. I don't want this guy walking around that way. For feet, I'm going to grab these landing pads from a spare Storm Eagle. And I know that they're basically going to go in the same slot, but they don't really fit exactly right. So what I end up doing is trimming off the nubs where the old feet or the old legs used to go. I smush some more green stuff down in there to support the new legs from the Mauler Fiend. And those are ultimately going to be drilled in for stability. The feet, as you can see, are kind of fitting on at an awkward slanted angle, which I know I like the size of the feet, but I know that if I put him on there currently right now, he's going to kind of come across Pee Wee Herman style, like kind of dancing whatever that dance was, the dun 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 kind of thing. So what I ultimately decide to do is drill into the feet, pin them to the lower arm, the old hand rather. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically suspend him over top of some wreckage and rubble to make it look like he's kind of walking down a pile of debris where his feet would have tilted. Kind of in the same way if you walk down a hill, your ankles lean forward. So now I'm looking at spacing options. I'm thinking about the base. On the first base you see there is a 80 millimeter base. I also consider a 100 millimeter base. But ultimately I want him to be big, but not too big. I want him to feel like he is a Death Dread and not something bigger than a Death Dread. So I stick him on an 80 millimeter round. What I'm doing now is I'm grabbing some tile sections from the City of Death. This is the terrain kits from 40K. And I'm basically taking some of the older ones and cutting them up. I'm literally going to wedge them directly onto the model's feet with some glue. And then I'm going to worry about how to get them straight on the base after that. Rather than mount him to the base and try to figure that out, I'm going to mount him to the floor and then figure out how to make it evened out on the base. And I'm going to do that with green stuff. So I grab some green stuff and basically put it on almost like big blobs of gum, stick them onto the base, and now I'm just starting to angle the feet in whatever direction makes the most sense. I dry fit a million times until I'm feeling comfortable with it. And once I get him basically to the point that he's feeling fairly organic, he seems like he could walk this way, that if he was walking down a pile of stuff that he would walk this way, then I go ahead and start trimming up some of the spare green stuff. It doesn't matter at this point that there's a lot of extra green stuff, because we're going to cover all of that with junk, and then I'll blend that in with some ballast material. So I just basically grab anything that I need to shove in there, go ahead and grab it in there, push it in. As it cures overnight, those will be locked in place. I stand him upright into the approximate position that I need him in, and then I'm just going to let him rest overnight like that. And then once he's dried and standing straight tomorrow, I can continue on with part 2. So I've gotten the legs out of the way, got the feet out of the way, and got the knob in there. Part 2 will cover the arms. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Be sure to check out part 2 coming up hopefully very shortly. And check out all of our videos on Patreon, including our client-only series like this, where you can see how we build client models. You can also check out our cheat code series. And until next time, put your minis where your mouth is.